I want to welcome everybody today to this edition of our Daytime Dialogues. It's a true honor to have Dr. Lichtenstein with us today. I had the pleasure a few years back when Dr. Lichtenstein visited Chicago to spend the day with her. It was fulfilling actually a promise I had made to her and to Rav Aaron when they had visited on a previous time, that when they came back the next time to Chicago, we would take a tour together of Chicago. And when Dr. Lichtenstein came to speak, we had a wonderful time, but I had a better time than she did because I got to spend it with her. She unfortunately had to spend it with me. So I thank Dr. Lichtenstein for joining us today for today's Daytime Dialogues. For those who don't know of her, Dr. Lichtenstein has her PhD from Bar-Ilan University. She lectured there for many years. She is the daughter of the Rav Soloveitchik, her late husband, who had all of the connections with Chicago from the time he learned in Chicago and studied and lived. Rav Aaron Lichtenstein Zatzal was the Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshivat Har Etzion and the Rosh Kollel Yeshiva University. But Dr. Lichtenstein is Dr. Lichtenstein. So she is someone we wanted to talk to today, and I thank you for joining me. I just want to start out with a very simple question of how is it going? You're in Alon Shvut. Are people getting out? Is the yeshiva open? Are schools? Are shuls? What's happening now in Israel?
What's happening now in Israel, we have a second wave of corona. The first one, we were all closed down. There were very few cases. There were very few deaths. They opened much too fast. They opened the high schools. They opened the grammar schools, and that was good because they opened them in a limited way. Then they opened the high schools at one fell swoop, and all the young people acted like young people, and we have a second wave. So the yeshivot are organized in a very amazing kind of a way. They call them capsules. 26 young men. The medrashot of the women are the same thing. Migdalos is the same thing. 26 young people spend 2 weeks together. They learn together. They eat together. They sleep in the same dormitory rooms, and they are enclosed in plastic. There's a plastic sheet down one side of them and another side of the base measures. And then beyond this plastic sheet is another 26, and then another 26. The teachers are the own teachers. They can only teach this capsule. The Rosh Yeshivas, if they have to give a lecture to everybody, stand in what they call an aquarium. They stand in an enclosed place where they are in contact with now, and it's worked very well. It has worked very well.
Are people going out? Are people shopping?
People are going out and they're going shopping. There are those like me that are very careful. I haven't been in, today I went into a store and I looked first to see that there was absolutely no one in the store. And then I went to get myself what I wanted. I stood about 20 feet from the young woman at the counter and I paid her an exact change. People are going out. People are supposed to wear masks. It's against the law. You get a 500 shekel penalty if you don't. Some people do, some people don't. Part of the problem is that, first of all, many of the people that are getting sick now are young, and some of them have no symptoms, and now they don't feel badly. Some of them are very, very sick. We have people dying every day, 4 people a day, 7 people. It's really, and I think we're learning how to live with a crisis. And our government is finding it very difficult to run this crisis.
So picking up on that, in your own professional area of expertise, children and even adults are dealing with crisis and with trauma. And it's an experience that the world hasn't had in any of our lifetimes. How are people going to continue? Are we afraid that this is going to change who people are for the future? People going to bounce back? How do you see that? And how do you see helping people?
Well, I think I have a double answer. What an answer is in Israel, we've lived in turbulent times. And if you think of those, one of my younger daughter is a principal in Shar HaNegev, which is right near Gaza. And the people in Stay Road and in places like that come to her school, and they live under the constant fear of bombardment, and they have times schools are closed. So on the one hand, people, and they're very traumatized by this. And so in a sense, the corona has come in Israel on top of that for certain populations. But on the other hand, Israelis have gotten used to live in times of crisis. We have wars, we have terrorists. I think all of us have wars and terrorism. Once Israel was the place where there was terrorism, now there's terrorism in New York, there's terrorism in the United States. You have shootings every day in the United States that no one knows about. So on one hand, people are used to living on trauma. On the other hand, I think as every crisis like this, either it becomes an opportunity for people to get strengthened, or it becomes an opportunity for a lot of breakdown. We've seen, and I'm sure you've seen in the United States too, a lot of violence, family violence. The social workers are so busy they can't keep themselves going. Because if you take a family and lock them in the house under crisis, and the economic situation is unclear, and many people have lost jobs, people unemployment, people are people that work in the tourism, people who work in restaurants, people who work in stores, they've all lost, many of them have lost their jobs. And so there's been a lot of violence in family. There's been, however, on the other side of it, there's been a lot of coming together of families. One of the things that I think was very good when nuclear families, young families, had to make the Seder by themselves. I know one young family that called me and said, what do? We've never made a Seder in our whole life. How can you make a Seder with only your own children? You need grandparents, you need cousins, you need. And after the Seder, they called and said to me, this was the most wonderful thing because we could relate to every child. We could do what needed to be done. And they really, I said, you took a giant step in your parenthood. And I'm sorry for the phone, but I can't stop it. You took a giant step in your parenthood. And I think that is a good thing that's coming out of this crisis. I think children, on the one hand, are flexible, and if they feel that their parents are protecting them, and that they can turn also to daven and to feel protected also by God, I think that this helps them very much. I really do. I think it's a good thing for children in that sense.
So I'm going to transition for a minute because the Lichtenstein name is synonymous with what we call either centrist Orthodoxy, modern Orthodoxy. Tonight and tomorrow is my son's yahrzeit, and my son Yaakov's Halloween.
Wow.
And I give
a shir. Him well.
Thank you.
I remember him well.
And I give shir every year on his yahrzeit, and every shir I always quote either from your husband or from your father, Zichronim Livracha. Where do you think we are in this world we call either Dati Leumi or modern Orthodoxy or centrist Orthodoxy? Are we in a good place? Are we the future?
We're always the future because we are the future. But I think no doubt that we're the future, and as Rat Hashem, God will watch us. But I personally don't think we're in a good place. I think the winds have blown into our community. And I think part of it is, I say it really often, the word modern Orthodox. My father, I heard from Rabbi Fabian Schaffield, he should be well and healthy. Ad Meir Ve'esrim, he's not a young man. And I heard from Rabbi Fabian Schaffield once, he said, the Rav didn't like hyphenated words. He said to him once, I don't like hyphenated words. Because a hyphenated word like modern Orthodox means that Orthodoxy and modernity are equal. Now, I do not think that modernity and Orthodoxy are equal. I think our Jews, and they used to call them frum Jews. There used to be frum Jews and not frum Jews. And the frum Jews included everybody, because it was such an amazing thing that in the United States of America, you were shown Shabbos. It really didn't matter if you were a chassid or a misnagid or what they call today a haredi or what they call yeshivish. I know there's all this jargon, what they call it, or you were a mizrachist. All those things, you were from Jew. And I think the issue is that we are firm Jews who are involved in the world. Now, if that makes us modern, I don't know, because there are many things in the modern world that are relative. Many things in the world are not absolute truth. They're all relative. And I think religion gives you absolute truth. It gives you a way of looking at the world. I think that the point is we are Orthodox and we are Orthodox, we are religious, we do not step back from the world, but we are involved in both. And that's the issue I talked about when I was in Chicago. We went on that wonderful tour. That we are involved in two things, in creativity and in tikkun olam, in fixing the world. God has left part of the creation of the world to man to finish. Now, you can't change the world unless you are part of that world. And so I think our religious community is part of the world, but whether we identify with all the modern values, I don't think so. And I think this kind of winds have come into our youngsters. They're not looking for tradition anymore. They're looking for change. They're looking for self-fulfillment. And I think for a religious Jew, self-fulfillment is not the ultimate value. For a religious Jew, avodat Hashem, service of God, is the ultimate value. If you will look at Maslow's very famous ladder of needs, and the top, the greatest thing is self-fulfillment. He doesn't say altruism. It would seem to me, if you were not a religious person, it wouldn't be avodat Hashem, but it would be altruism given to the other. But when the ultimate value becomes self-fulfillment, so the whole world is different. So you look at religion differently, and you look if you feel self-fulfilled, if you feel actualized, and tradition and helping others and being involved in the world out of a religious Weltanschauung, a religious view, has become much less of what it used to be. And I look around me, and sometimes I'm very saddened by what I see. I said to my children one day, it's too bad that I'm old and I have to spend my last years in a world full of corona and full of trauma and recession. It's not too good.
Well, that'll pass. I'm sure it'll pass. And we need to in the world this way. But I want to go back even a little further, back to your childhood in Boston. You were among the early students at Maimonides that your father had started and your mother was in charge of. And in terms of what was it like to be growing up in Boston, to be in a day school when it wasn't the popular thing to do, to be in, by the way, a co-ed day school where you had the same Gemara classes that the boys in your class had together.
Yeah.
We're all together. What were those years like?
So first of all, when you go to Ida Crown, you probably go to a school with hundreds of children. How many children are in Ida Crown?
220. 220.
220. Okay, so we had less than that. We had small classes. The classes were small. The living conditions, they originally started Maimonides in the Young Israel of Roxbury. And when the Young Israel of Roxbury had no heat, or when the water broke, because it was not a very well-kept building, we used to have it in my parents' house. And so it was not the formality of the school. And then I found it rather difficult to be there because I was rather salvation started, and people expected me to be good, to be smart, to do all the things that good little girls do, et cetera, et cetera. And when the kids in the class would misbehave, I would be very careful not to tell my parents about it because they were too involved in school for them to know about it. And I said to you, one of the famous stories was how we ran away from the teachers because we were when I was in the 7th grade, there was no school building. So everybody was in the Young Israel of Roxbury, and they sent us to the Young Israel of Mattapan, all by ourselves, 7 children and a teacher. She had no notion what to do with us because we were not very good. But in a sense, though, there was a sense of family. There was a sense of we're doing something different. There was a sense of all these families became, many of the people that send their children to the school did it, I think, under great personal sacrifice, because they were told, this was a long time ago. Day school movement was not what it is today. People were told that if you sent your child to Maimonides, he'll never speak or know how to write English properly. And the people and those families that sent them, and they became very close to one another because we were all different than everybody else in the neighborhood.
And your father and his interaction with Maimonides, he was there on Fridays? How did that work?
Well, when I was a little girl, he didn't come to the school that often. He set the curriculum, and they had a principal. And later on, when I grew up and I left, then he would come on Maimonides. That's past my day. In the early days, very few children to come from. But the most important thing that they would do was they worried about paying the teachers. That has become one of the almost essential parts of a teacher must get paid on time. And what happened was they couldn't pay them once a month because they didn't have enough money. So they would pay them every Friday. And one of my early childhood memories is that on Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday, my mother would call the secretary and say, is there money for a payroll? And she would say, no. And then they would begin thinking, where would they get a payroll from? Could they give this one to give money and that one to give money? And then they would have a list of people, my father among them, that would go to the bank and take out personal loans to pay the teachers every week. There never was a week that the teachers weren't paid. And so in our family, we were 3 children, and there was Maimonides, but the most loved child was Maimonides because it took up, that child took up a lot of space. You know from running the school, you just can't run it. There were school committee meetings, and Zev Ella sent me minutes of the school committee meetings that he had copied over, and some of them are fascinating to see. They really nurtured the school. They nurtured, my mother was on the school committee, my aunt was on the school committee. They nurtured it and thought through educational issues. It's a very interesting thing to see.
In 1971, when you and Rabaran decided to go on Aliyah,
Yeah.
what was the decision-making piece? In other words, what made you decide to leave the East Coast, Rabaran's role in yeshiva at the time?
I was working for YU too. I was a director of student services at Stern College.
Okay.
My husband had come to yeshiva at the age of 18 as a freshman in college. He'd spent his whole life there, his adult life, except for when he was at Harvard. What caused me and what caused him? There were 2 different answers. Okay. What caused him is what he had said. I don't know if I should say this to Americans, but if you ask me the question, I'll answer you honestly. He had said at a goodbye party that they had for him, and Rabbi David Miller told me that he went to this party. It was of the students or the other teachers, and he said to me, you know why I'm moving to Israel? Because, and my husband loves sports, as you knew. I think it was in Chicago, and he signed that baseball.
Yes, and we have a baseball from you as well.
That's right. And so my husband said, because I don't want to be in the grandstands, I want to be a player in the field of Jewish history. And the only place I can be a player in the field of Jewish history is in Israel. And that's why he moved, because he wanted to be a player. And recently, we've been going through a list of letters that he wrote, and you'd be surprised how many letters were about politics, because that's where the playing field of Jewish history was. After he died, the High Court Justice Neil Handel gave a hesped in which he quoted from then and how many decisions of the Israeli Supreme Court my husband had been quoted. And so he became a player on the playing field. I moved for a different reason. I was disenchanted with the United States. I felt there was a lot of subterranean anti-Semitism. After I read the book, While 6 Million Died, and I realized my parents and my aunts, my grandmother was so grateful for the lack of anti-Semitism in America, for the freedom in America. We were brought up to be patriots. There's no anti-Semitism in America, but the State Department is anti-Semitic, and Franklin Roosevelt was anti-Semitic, and you couldn't buy a house on Cape Cod, and you couldn't get into medical school, and you had to open Jewish hospitals. I mean, there's a whole list of things. And I did not want to be a guest in a host country. I remember very clearly there was a Republican National Convention, and Senator Margaret Chase Smith was the chairwoman of the Republican National Convention. I don't remember what year it was, but she lived in the same house for 7 generations. And I said to myself, that's what I want for my children, that we should not be guests. That's one reason I left. And second of all, when you come to Israel, you're responsible for what's going on in this country. And I became a social worker in the general area, not in general society, not in the religious community. And I impacted on not only teaching social work, but I did lots of work for the Department of Welfare, changing the laws for child welfare. And so that's why I moved. I don't know if I should say this. But
no, I think it's, there is a story that I heard that your father used to cut out the sports scores for your sons and send them?
No. The story has a grain of truth. My father lived with my sister after my mother died. And my sister, Dr. Tara Twersky, and her husband, Professor Twersky, who was the Talmud Rebbe. So they came with their children on a sabbatical to Israel. And the year they came for one semester. The last semester, we used to go to Boston to be with my father on Shabbatot. And my father would cut out all the sports things to send to the Twersky children when they were on sabbatical.
So the Lichtenstein children were not the same level of sports fans as the Twersky children.
Well, the Lichtenstein children were great sports fans in America. You know how we came in Aliyah? It was Bat Day. The day we came in Aliyah was Bat Day at Yankee Stadium. And my children went to Yankee Stadium the day we moved, and they got bats. We'd already sent all of our baggage ahead. We have sent a lift. They got on the plane. Today you couldn't do that. They say they were terrorists. They got on the plane, my 3 boys with bats in their hands to come. But when they came here, we used to still play baseball, but then they became soccer fans.
And your children are in all different roles in the Jewish world.
That's correct.
You have a son who's Rosh Hashiva in Brooklyn,
Right.
Another son, Meir, who I just found out from you is a Rosh Hashiva as well now with Reb Sherlow.
He's not a Rosh Hashiva. Only YU has Rosh Hashivas. Everybody, he's around. He's a teacher.
He's around. Okay. Well, and then your son Moshe is a Rosh Hashiva as well.
Right.
Your daughter is a principal, and your other daughter is the head of the Midrasha Esti at Megalos.
Yeah.
So the Lichtensteins consider, but there is a range within the spectrum, let's say, of Frumkeit, using your earlier term of the Frum community.
Right.
How does all that happen? Everyone has their own personality, I know, but within your house, if you were to identify how you and Rav Aaron Zatzal raised a family, was it focused? Was there an ideology focus, or was it just?
Of course, there was an ideology focus. You respond to the world right around you through the spectrum of what you believe in. I wouldn't call it ideology, I would call it belief, because ideology has a different connotation. This was belief. It was a firm total belief. But I think I'll tell you an interesting story. the same Neil Handel once said, my husband, there was a story about my husband that there was a meeting of parents at the yeshiva, and they asked him whether there were going to be tests in the yeshiva, because yeshivas don't have tests, universities have tests. So he gave them a long speech of the arguments why you should have tests. So one parent turned around to Neil Handel and said, he's going to have tests. He says, no, 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 just the opposite. And then he gave a long argument for why you should have, and he gave a long argument for why you shouldn't have, and then he said he decided not to. So I think in our house, my husband was very willing to hear the different opinions. The difference, I say, between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is that Beit Hillel was always willing to hear the other fellow. Then he would do what he wanted. Beit Shammai was only willing to hear himself. And so I hope, I don't know if it's true, I don't know what my children, how they would answer this question, because I think children tend to answer questions differently than parents answer questions. I hope that there was a sense that they could find their own way and they could do what they want. But I think, except for my son that's Haredi, they're all within our ballpark. My son that was Haredi is in a ballpark that once my father-in-law said to me, how did he get to be like that? And I said to my father-in-law, did you ever hear of Reb Chaim Brisker? And so he had a family tradition all over. And so, I don't know, God was good to us. That's all I can say.
I remember
nothing to do with me.
I remember when you and your husband were in Chicago together and we were doing an interview in someone's home. I asked your husband about Harvard, and he said, and his response was that he would recommend a person go to Harvard as long as he had the same condition that he had, a regular chavrusa with Rav Soloveitchik. But I also once spoke to your son Moshe, and I asked him, how come you didn't get a PhD like your father, like your grandfather, like your mother? And he told me that he had had a conversation with your husband, and they felt that the master's degree was sufficient to be able to continue.
He doesn't have a master's, he only has a bachelor's.
I thought
my daughter Tony has a master's, my son Meir has a doctorate, and the rest of them have bachelor's degrees.
And it's but that was sufficient. He said that the decision was that would be enough to be able to enhance. Or even Moshe once told me the story that when your husband was recovering from the second surgery, and he woke up and he quoted to him Shakespeare. And that's why he knew that he was going to be better at that point. Dr. Lichtenstein, we could continue this for a very long time, but our time is almost up. And I want to end off with, I guess, one simple request. You have an audience of the community in Chicago, and it'll go beyond. Is there some word of encouragement, of advice, of something you want to leave us with? We're on Rosh Chodesh Av also, of something that we should think about, a piece of wisdom.
My only piece of wisdom I can give you is to have bitachon in the Rebbeinu Shalom and do the best that you can to fulfill those things that you have to do. You really have to try your best. I always say to my children, I don't know if I've been a good parent or a bad parent, but I tried my best. And I think people have to really try their best. They have to stand, and I think one sometimes has to stand on tiptoe in order to keep your head above water. But I find that if you're challenged and you try your best, and then you have Siyata D'Shmaya, then that's what you really have to do. Because I think we have trying times ahead of us. I think there's a worldwide recession. I think we're dealing with a pandemic that we don't know what's going to be. I think there's going to be maybe things will be different. Digitalization has made a revolution for us. I think families, some are doing well, some of them aren't doing well. But all I can say is have bitachon in the Rebbeinu Shalom and stand on your tiptoes to keep your head above water and try your very best.
I thank you both for that piece of wisdom. I'll keep on trying to reach up. And I thank you very much.
On your tiptoes.
On the tiptoes. And I thank you for this time. And it has been wonderful. Please stay healthy, stay well. and
Thank
send
you.
our best to the entire family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a
Thank you
wonderful
very
rest
much.
of the day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.